very rewarding job. There are so many opportunities to impact young boys and girls, young men and women, sometimes entire communities. If you work in housing development, there are so many opportunities to impact people's lives in this community. Our whole mission on this job is to improve their quality of life in the community. And our mission has remained the same over the years, going back to, as I spoke about this morning, the early footmen or the early watchmen back in the 1650s. Their function was to preserve peace and to react to civil disorder. We do that today, the same thing.
Beginning of policing in America in the middle 1800s, the police were regarded at the beginning as people who were not respected. The public, by and large, didn't have a great respect for them. So we've got stories and documents of police officers going out on patrol, having to almost fight their way out of the precinct houses, battling with people, and then fighting their way back to the precinct houses. So it was a very different time back then. Like I said, the public, by and large, was unaccustomed to people telling them, persons of authority telling them what they have to do.
This document is the ordinance that was signed by Mayor Thomas A. Doyle on August 12, 1864, creating the police department. The interesting thing about this document, and about him individually, was that you could say that Mayor Doyle was the Buddy Cianci of the 19th century. He was very aggressive. He was an independent Republican, but he was also a take-charge guy and a guy that wanted to control things. The Irish had inhabited Federal Hill. The Italians moved in the 1880s, starting in the 1880s, and there were clashes between these ethnic groups. The police often had to get in the middle of these two groups and try to referee these clashes, and not even able to speak the language. You could build a case that war created an opportunity for minorities and women to enter the public service, the police department, for example. You can see it in the Civil War with the Irish coming back and being allowed an opportunity to join the force. During World War I, the first Italian to join the police force. During World War II, the first black officer to be recruited into the department, and the first police woman was hired in 1942 when most of the men were off fighting in the war. So you can see this consistent pattern of minorities and ethnics and women having that door open to them during time of war.
In 1972, the police department switched from a traditional blue uniform to the brown uniform, very similar to the World War II Army officers' uniform. That uniform continued till about 1981, when then Colonel Mancuso added an orange trim to it. And that stayed until the early 90s, when then Commissioner John Partington felt as though it's time to go back to the blue, and they went back to the traditional blue uniforms. But the leaps and bounds they've made in the past 20 years is just astronomical. You look inside of a police car today, it looks like a spaceship. They've got communications for, computers, they have the radios, they have LoJack, they have all sorts of things that were never even considered.
I've been told by my father many years ago, there's two types of policemen: Providence policemen and people who want to be Providence policemen.